Hey, what's going on everybody? This is G The Hypersapien, and in this video I'm going to teach you and show you how to gap fill with SPRUE GOO. So SPRUE GOO is really good for gap filling. Now this is going to be for plastic miniatures, so stuff like Warhammer and whatnot. Plastic miniatures together, you smash them together and they'll have a bit of a hole in between it. They'll have a bit of a gap that needs to be filled. I'll show you how I make SPRUE GOO. So as you can see in front of me, I've got Tamiya extra thin cement. Now this is my go-to plastic cement or plastic glue for miniatures. Now I've used a few different brands and this is definitely my preferred one. I have a few different versions of Tamiya plastic cement, but this is the go-to. Why the extra thin is good, it's so thin that if you put it on some plastic, it won't just melt it away really quickly. Other brands of plastic glue and Tamiya cement, the other versions, you put it onto a miniature. Say if you make a bit of a mistake and you put it in the wrong place, it might melt up that plastic. Now I'll show you here that you can basically put it onto surfaces. So I put it on here. Most other plastic cements will melt this straight away, but this is so thin that it's not going to melt that. Other cement that I've tried would eat this all away by now and leave you some really bad marks. If you leave it for a couple of minutes, it'll dry really quickly. So I'll show you how to make SPRUE GOO. It's really quick and simple, and I'll show you the way that I use it. So these obviously come in glass little containers. So you take off the lid and they have a little brush on the end. This is going to come in really handy for our SPRUE GOO. Now you can get another glass container, but I'll show you the way that I do it. After you use it for a while, obviously you have one like this which is nearly empty. The other ingredient you're going to need for your SPRUE GOO is going to be some sprue. I should be using some old cheapy clippers for this, but what you do is just cut off little pieces. Just like that. So after you clip off all these little bits of sprue, you put it into your Tamiya extra thin cement. I don't quite know the ratio of how much sprue and how much glue you want to use. Cover up the bottom of the glass container with sprue, and then obviously you have some Tamiya extra thin, so hopefully you can see it. The Tamiya is about double of what the sprue is, so hopefully you can see it inside there. It doesn't take that long to start melting, but I'd probably say leave it 24 hours just to be safe. And the brush of these, once you start getting low on glue as well, it's just another little tip. You just want to be careful though. You just want to be careful though that the brush doesn't fall out, because it'll be a pain in the ass if it falls into this little container. You're not going to really be able to get that back out. So just make sure that the brush doesn't fall out. That's just another little tip if you can't reach the bottom once you get low on your SPRUE GOO or your Tamiya extra thin cement. But this is one that I've been using before, and I'll show you the consistency of what the SPRUE GOO is like once you have it. So as you can see, it's sort of like cream or milk almost, the consistency. So that's what you're looking for. So hopefully you can see that. So get a bit on, run it down the side. And as you can see, it's all mixed nicely together. You've got the glue and you've got the sprue pieces to make your SPRUE GOO. When people have made SPRUE GOO in other containers, I've seen them use brushes, some old sable brushes to apply it to the miniature. I think this is killing two birds with one stone though. You've got the container, you just chuck in sprue once your glue's sort of halfway. You chuck in some sprue and then you've got the little brush to apply it to the miniature as well. Now before I end the video, I'll just show a little bit of a demonstration of how I apply it to a model. The model that I haven't got around to touching up with some SPRUE GOO yet. So you basically just get enough on your, basically get enough on the brush. Obviously if it's a bigger gap or a bigger area, you can load it up a bit more. But you can see here's a gap. You might have to do it a couple of times. And also with the brush it's nice to go around. You can also scrape this off later with a hobby knife if it's a little bit rough. But you can see it just covers that little gap there. Little smaller gaps on his back here with the skulls. Now because this has plastic sprue and glue in there, obviously it's causing a reaction and it's sort of melting the plastic on the miniature, but it's also adding more plastic to the miniature as well. And obviously the glue's melting it all, but obviously the glue's melting it and welding it all together. See, this little Tamiya brush is really nice to put this sprue goo onto the model. So you can see here's another little gap there. Around his ear there. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Sometimes you might need to do this a couple of times until you fill up the gap. But obviously you can kind of work that out yourself if it's a small gap or if it's a big gap. Also it dries quite quickly as well, so it doesn't take too long to dry the sprue goo. If you use stuff like putty or green stuff, it's going to take a lot longer to dry. Now this probably, 10 minutes and it's probably all good. Even little joins like that in the hand. You can put a little bit of that, smooth it out with the nice little brush here. Hopefully you can see it. And yeah, it works on bigger areas. It works on bigger gaps as well, say like a tank or something. When you put two pieces together and it has a gap, just load it up, slap it on. You might need to do it, as I said, a few times depending on how big the gap is, but yeah, you'll definitely fill gaps. The good thing with sprue goo, instead of like putty, once you put it onto a gap, you can come through if you need with a knife to smooth it all out. You can even sand it down with some sanding sticks, or you can use a hobby knife. I usually use a hobby knife to smooth out areas. So to say if this is on a bit too much, you can kind of come through once it's dry and you can sort of scrape it so it's all smooth again. But hopefully that video helps you out, and yeah, go and make some sprue goo. It's really good. I really suggest it. This is the way that I make it. But yeah, go and make some sprue goo and fill all those gaps, because yeah, they look quite ugly once you paint a model and it's got all these gaps in there. Yeah, if you found this useful, please smash the like button. That would really help me to grow the channel. Yeah, leave a comment, let me know if this helped. Let me know how you make your sprue goo, if you have any other ways and suggestions. Or how do you fill your gaps? Let me know in the comments. Cheers. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss another video. But as always, this was G The Hypersapien, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.